Welcome back to the Gore Guide, where we're on a journey to compile the definitive list of gore and splatter films. Today we take a look at the film that made Troma a household name and introduced the character that has gone on to be recognised around the world. It is, of course, the Toxic Avenger. The Toxic Avenger is a 1984 film written by Joe Ritter and directed by Michael Hertz and Lloyd Kaufman, who is credited here as Samuel Wheel. It stars Gary Schneider, Andre Miranda,
Oops, sorry.
Mark Torgel,
Melvin, my boy!
and Mitch Cohen and Kenneth Kessler, who share duties as Toxic. When Lloyd Kaufman and Michael Hertz decided to deviate from the sex comedies that they were making under the Troma name at the time to make a superhero/monster movie, they had no idea the impact that it would have. The Toxic Avenger has spawned 3 sequels, an animated series, a comic book series published by Marvel, a video game, and a musical, and the main character, Toxie, has become a pop culture icon. Now with a remake in the works, reportedly starring Peter Dinklage as Toxie, and Kevin Bacon as the villain, it's set to find a new audience and step back into the spotlight. I think it's fair to say if you haven't seen The Toxic Avenger, you've at least heard of it. But is it worthy of all the attention? Well, let's take a look and find out. Awkward weakling Melvin works as the janitor at Tromaville Health Club, where he is constantly being picked on by the customers. When a prank goes wrong, Melvin ends up falling headfirst into a barrel of toxic waste. The chemicals cause him to mutate and give him superhuman strength. He takes it upon himself to help the people of Tromaville and clean up the streets.
You can tell all your scum friends that things are gonna change in this town. I'm not just another pretty face.
But the corrupt mayor and local officials are unhappy that Toxie's costing them money and they want him dead. The Toxic Avenger set the precedent for the Troma brand going forward. Campy, sleazy, no-budget movies with a propensity for violence and childish humour. It's aimed at a pretty small demographic, but it works. Maybe because I'm immature, but I don't really care. Toxic Avenger is fun and funny. It's kind of like a cross between the Carry On films and Hammer Horror, or Mel Brooks and Herschel Gordon Lewis. It's almost cartoon-like in the way that everything is so over the top. The action and stunts are good, and the effects are well done, especially considering the small budget. There's a fair amount of gratuitous violence for the time, including the infamous scene that's cut from a lot of versions where a young boy gets knocked off his bike and his head gets squashed by a car. The characters are all very exaggerated as well, with lots of overacting and extreme facial expressions. Even the names are ridiculous, like Bozo, Slug, Cigar Face, Knuckles, and Nipples. It's cool to see the excellent Patrick Kilpatrick in his debut role, and Marissa Tomei in her Blink and You'll Miss It debut appearance. Toxie himself is a great character. His voice is ridiculous and it cracks me up every time he speaks.
I've never done anything like this before.
And I also really like the almost universal monster movie approach to introducing him. Lots of slow motion shots and classical music, and it takes a while before we actually see his face. His makeup is pretty good and he has a very distinct look, which kind of gives me the impression that a certain character in a certain very popular family film released the year after this was a blatant rip-off of Toxie. Troma's admirable representation of the underdog also started with this movie. People of all shapes and sizes and from all walks of life are welcome, and Toxie himself reminds us not to judge people based on how they look. I also love the theme song. It's very catchy and very 80s, and I've only just managed to get it out of my head.
I love the sound of your body talk.
No! I'll come right out and admit that a lot of people won't like this movie. They'll think that it's stupid and that it's not funny, and I'm not going to say if they're right or wrong. People's opinions are different, and I'm just here to tell you mine and give you an idea of what the film is like, so you can decide if you want to watch it, and then you can make your own mind up. The Toxic Avenger isn't for everyone. It isn't a good film in the traditional sense. The accents are bad.
And she had a police record a mile long.
The car chases and crashes are all filmed on deserted streets. You can tell that the extras are just locals from the area, especially when Melvin catches fire and runs down the street. Some of the B-roll footage is blurry and out of focus, and the editing is choppy in places. There are also some random recycled shots that are used towards the end of the film that feel totally out of place. The Toxic Avenger is a low-budget film, and you have to remember that if you decide to watch it. The blood and gore in Toxic Avenger may be a bit tame by today's standards, but was shocking at the time it was released, especially the head smashing scene. The effects are all practical, are pretty well done, and fit in perfectly with the cartoony feel of the film. So it gets 3 out of 5 for amount of blood, and 3 out of 5 for quality of effects. I'm not ashamed to say that I love this movie. It's low budget, sleazy, campy, juvenile, and thoroughly enjoyable. It obviously has its flaws, and I know a lot of people hate it, but it entirely depends on how you approach it. Whether you enjoy this movie or not is dependable on your level of acceptance for immaturity, and I'm glad to say that mine is very high, so The Toxic Avenger gets 4 out of 5 stars.
What's up, guys?
Let me know in the comments below what your thoughts are on The Toxic Avenger. Are you excited for the remake? What do you think about Peter Dinklage being cast as Toxie? There's a link in the description below for anybody that wants to purchase a copy of the film for themselves, along with a link to my list of films on Letterboxd. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, and click on the bell to keep up to date with new content. Thanks for watching, and until next video, have a bloody good time. I'll come right out and admit that a lot of people won't like this movie. A lot of people will find it stupid, and a lot of people will find it not funny. Jesus, a lot of people.